What is up, guys? Today you're going to learn a few techniques to completely overwrite the styling that is set by your theme and be able to go beyond what the theme settings allow you to change. Because as you probably know, things like colors and fonts, they're under here under theme settings, and they're set globally across your entire site, right? So you set a few primary colors, like your brand colors, you set your secondary colors, and then like all the buttons and stuff, they automatically get these colors applied to them, right? So these buttons, this is like the primary, this is the secondary, and you don't have specific control over which button is what color. But what if, for example, you want to make this add to cart button pink? Or maybe you want to change the heading size of your product title or this vendor, or maybe you want to change the heading size in your footer, anything across your site. If you want to change something specifically, this video is going to show you how you can kind of surgically go in and change that specific thing without affecting other things. Because that's kind of the issue, right? You're going to love this video because it's going to give you a lot of control, a lot of very fine control over your design. However, with great power comes great responsibility, and it's going to be very easy to also break your theme, right? Not completely break your theme, but you know, affect more than what you intended to affect, right? So you wanted to make one button pink and you end up making like all your buttons pink across your store, which is not what you want probably. So I'm going to teach you a few ways that you can like really carefully go in and make those changes. The examples I'm going to show you are focused on colors and fonts, just because these are the most common things that people want to do and the most simple things to teach you. But really, if you do have some more advanced knowledge of CSS, then you have no limitations really, and you can use the concepts that I teach here and combine that with your CSS knowledge to just change anything you want across your store. So anyway, with all that said, let's jump into my computer and get started. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is look at the page that you want to be editing and have that open in a tab on your browser. And the second thing you want to do is go to Online Store, Themes, and then under Actions, click Edit Code to enter the code editor. We're looking for theme.liquid. You can search it, but it's actually right here, theme.liquid. This is the main file that contains your entire store. All the other like section files, templates, they're kind of like being included inside of theme.liquid. In this file, there's always a CSS file, which is usually called base.css, right? But it might be called global.css. Anyway, it's your main, like your core CSS file. In Dawn and in all the free Shopify 2.0 themes, it'll be called base.css. But yeah, you want to find the main CSS file for your theme, copy and paste that onto the next line, and we're going to call it custom.css, or something that may be even more memorable for you, so that you know that like this is the file that you were creating and editing, right? Later when you forget the name, custom.css might not be good enough. I'll call it ed custom. You might want to call it your name or your store name. Anyway, hit save, and then we're actually gonna create this file. Okay, so right now we've like linked it into our theme, but we haven't created it yet. So we're gonna go to Assets folder, and we're going to add a new asset. As you can see, base.css is already in here, and all our CSS files are in here. Click Add a New Asset and create a blank file. The extension is going to be CSS, and the file name is going to be whatever you named it, right? So I hope you see what we've done. We've created a new empty CSS file, which is where we're going to write our styling rules. And we've like included that file into our theme by linking it here in theme.liquid. So now we can write CSS here, and this is going to have an effect across our entire store. Now, if you're completely new to CSS, then this is like not the ideal tutorial for you, but I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible, as straightforward as possible. And I'll give you a quick recap as well. Or if you're someone who hasn't touched CSS in a while, you know. How does CSS work? Well, we target an element, right? So one of the common elements that you might have on your store is the H1, right? Or the H2, H3, these are heading levels. So you type H1 and then you open up these curly brackets, hit enter, and then you write your rule here. You're going to write color and then this colon and then red and then semicolon. Am I getting those names right? Semicolon, colon. Okay. Anyway, that's the basics of CSS, right? Another common one that you might see is like P for paragraph, right? In your HTML. And to target all paragraphs, we can do this. We're just gonna write color green, and this will literally make all paragraphs across our entire site green. And like, you usually wouldn't want to do this. So instead, you would usually use the class name, right? Now let me show you a simple example. I'm in Google Chrome, and if you right click and hit inspect, you can see the code of your web page. And so this button has a class of button and another class called button primary, right? And so what the theme does is attached to button primary, it's got like this color, right? So this is simplified, but it's kind of written like this. Button primary, color, you know, dark green or whatever that color currently is, right? And this you can ignore, you can name it any way you want. So you can use underscores, you can use dashes, 1 dash, 2 dashes. This is just part of the name. The only part that's important here is the dot. Dot means it's a class, right? This is a class, and we also have sometimes ID. So this particular block, this image with text, it has an ID. And to target an ID, we would use the hash symbol. And then if there was like, okay, this ID is kind of complex, but we can actually target it like so. And then we would be targeting specifically this block. Okay, so that is a brief recap of CSS. Lastly, one more thing. You write the thing you're targeting, right? Then you hit space. So there's a space. You open your curly braces, and then your cursor will be in the middle of them. So just hit enter. And because you're in a code editor, it'll automatically do this, right? Try not to do like, I don't know, something weird like this, and then writing your color red here. And then like, that's just messy and difficult to read. This is a little bit better, but still, like the standard is kind of to do this, where this is on the first line, this is on the last line, and you write your stuff here. And this is indented as well. Don't do this, because that's going to be hard to read. You want to see what, like, these rules are inside of this, right? So when you have like a lot of rules, then it's easy to see like what's going on here. What I'm saying is pay attention to formatting. It's kind of important for readability and to make sure that you're not making any mistakes, especially leaving off these things that can screw up your CSS, right? Accidentally skipping that can screw up your CSS, and you'll notice the color changes as well when I do those things. That's a hint that you might be doing something wrong. So yeah, that's my recap of CSS for you. Okay, let's get on with it. I don't want to make this video too long. Let's say that we want to change the add to cart button to be pink. Okay, again, we're gonna hit inspect, right click and inspect in Google Chrome to see what classes are on this button, so what we can target. And yeah, this is going to be a more practical example. So the first class that I see is product-form__submit, right? And then we have like generic classes like button, button full width, and button primary. Now, what do you think these classes are for? I would say that these classes like button, button full width, these aren't just used on this add to cart button. They're used across the site. So we should be careful about targeting like those buttons, because we might change multiple buttons across the site that we don't want to change. But this product form submit, the naming of this class just tells me that, okay, there's probably no other button across the site called product form submit. So I would say that's pretty safe to use. I'm going to copy and paste in here, put a dot at the beginning to say that in CSS that we are targeting a class with the name of product form submit, space, open up your curly braces. And here we're going to write background dash color hot pink. Lovely color, hot pink. Save. And you should see that your button has turned pink. Now what we're doing here is we've just made the add to cart button across all our products pink. Now if you want to also change the text color, because you might want to do that if you made it like dark or something, then you want to use color. Okay, so we have on buttons background color and color. And the color can be, you know, what's a good color with pink? I don't know, yellow. As you can see, I am a developer, not a designer. That's probably a terrible combination. Oh, that's ugly. So anyway, you get what I'm saying here, right? This is how you make a global change. Next, let's say that, for example, I want this button to be pink, okay, inside the image with text section. Well, I'm going to show you how to do it wrong, okay? So we look at this button and like, okay, there's nothing like product form submit. There's no unique class on it, right? The only classes we see on it is button and button primary. So like, let's try that. Just as an experiment, let's target button and make button pink, right? So background color, hot pink. And let's take a look at what we've done. Okay, so this button is pink, but also this button is pink, right? And this button is pink, and now this button is pink, okay? Like all buttons across the store that are using this button class, they're all pink because the button class was not intended like for that purpose. It was intended to actually make the style of our button, like the border radius here, the width of the button, you know, the spacing inside of it, all of that stuff is attached to the button class. So we can't just hijack the class like that. So we need to find another way to do it. And the way we can do it is, say we want to affect only buttons inside the image with text section, right? So in CSS, what you can do is you have like the parent, right? Or in HTML, there's something like the parent, and then everything like this is the parent, this is the child of that parent, this is the child of that parent, this is the child of this parent, right? You look at the parent, and I'm seeing this class called image with text, and probably it's only used by the image with text section. And so I'd say that's a good thing that I can use. I'm gonna write dot, right, for a class, and then image with text, button. And so what this is saying is that all the buttons inside of the image with text section are going to be pink. So now when we refresh, you should see that this button is still pink, this button is still pink, but when we hit add to cart, we now see that these buttons are back to normal, okay? And that's because they're not inside of the image with text section. Now the next thing that I want to do is, what if only this button needs to be pink? Like only in this image with text section I want a pink button, but in this one I do not want a pink button. I want this to be normal. So what I'm saying here is I'm targeting not just the image with text section type, but this specific instance of the image with text section, okay? This specific placement on this specific page. Because what I've currently done is that even if I add the image with text section on the home page, then the button is still going to be pink, as you can see. We don't want that. We want to target that specific instance on the product page where I'm using it here. And to do that, I want to grab the ID of this section. In Shopify, whenever you add a section to the page, it's also generated with a unique ID. So if we go all the way up, we look at the parent, and we find the actual section, right? The section, it's not always going to be section like this. It might be a div with the ID of Shopify section template, number, underscore number, and it's going to have a class of Shopify section, right? So we can tell that's the section, and this is the section ID. Now, if I use that instead of this image with text, let's paste this here, and let's use hash to signify that this is an ID, not a class. Then it's saying that all the buttons inside of the section with this ID will be hot pink. And since there's only one section, the ID is unique, there's only one section with this ID, then finally we are targeting this specific button on this section, on this page, and not any other section. Now I'm just going to give you another example with fonts and font sizes. Then I'll explain to you also the dangers of this and what you should be careful of when you do this. So let's take a look at this image banner, and let's say that this isn't large enough for us. We have some basic settings on the size of the text, I think, in the image banner. Yeah, we can choose medium, large, but what if we want it larger than that? I don't know. I can't think of a better example. Right now, it doesn't really matter. We're looking for, like, we can target this class of banner heading, but obviously that would change each instance of this image banner, so if we use the image banner section on another page, or if we use it again lower down on the home page, then this change would still apply, right? So, you know, first we would do that banner heading, right? And say we want the font size to be, you know, 70 pixels or larger than it is now. And by the way, how do you check what size it is now? Well, we're going to take a look at this. You've clicked on the heading 2, like the element itself. And then here you might see font size, calc, var, you know, all of this stuff. So it's like a calculation, and there's a variable called font heading scale. It's not clear. You want to know in pixels, right? You want to know in pixels what the actual font size is? Just click on this tab that says computed, and here you can find the font size that is in actual pixels. This is the computed, or the calculated font size after like this calculation with the variable has been completed. So it's 52 pixels. It's 52 pixels, and here we are changing all banner headings to 70. Let's hit refresh, and here it's 70. This will be affecting all of them, and we know that now. And so we're like, okay, no, I want to be careful. I want to do it only on this specific instance of this section on the home page. So you find the section, you go up, up, up until you find, okay, main, this is the entire site, and then the section. Okay, this is the first section, this is the next one, the third one. And here we have the ID of this section. And again, you're just going to go ID, like hash for ID, and then paste in the ID. So now we're targeting the banner heading inside of this section. Okay, so now you've learned how to apply specific styles to sections based on their ID. Okay, so now you can surgically go in and modify just that section. You're like, okay, sweet, that's awesome. There seems to be no downside to this, it's pretty safe. Well, actually, I would use this sparingly if I were you, and only in situations when you really need it. And here are some of the downfalls, okay? Here are some of the issues that can go wrong. Let's go to our product here, and I'm simply going to remove this section, the one with the pink button, the one whose ID we're targeting. I'm gonna remove this section, and I'll remove this section. Say I made some changes. Say for a month or so, you didn't want to show some promo block, and then later you want to show it again, and you're like, okay, image with text, and you want to add it back in, and well, it's a different ID now, it's a different section. Like you killed that section, and now this section has been reborn with a different ID, and now this code that you wrote, it's actually completely redundant, it doesn't work. There will never be another section with this ID again. So if you want to make this pink again, then you're going to have to take a look at the ID of this section, grab the ID, and update that ID. So that can be kind of hard to manage. Okay, for this reason, it should be used sparingly, and it's also a good idea to add comments inside of your CSS so that you know what's going on. So if you don't know how to add comments in CSS, we can write a comment, and then you highlight it, and you press Command or Control and then slash. And comments, well, if you're not familiar with this, it's like just a comment for another developer. It's ignored by the computer. It's not read by Google Chrome, by the browser when it's outputting your site. It's just a comment for yourself, for another developer. And here I would write something like, this targets the first promo block, the first image with text promo block, or like, you know, if you're using it for sale, like sales block on the product page, right? So if you remove it, like later you come back to this code and you know what this does, and you know that you need to replace this. Okay, and then the other thing, the reason why I told you to make a custom CSS file like this, instead of adding your CSS to, for example, like adding CSS to base.css or into one of your component CSS files, is that when you change themes or when you update your theme, you're going to lose this file, okay? Or you're going to lose the changes. If you added them in base.css, you get a new copy of your theme, it's not going to have the changes. And you're going to have to go into each one, scroll to the bottom, find whatever changes you made, copy them into the new base.css on the new theme. No, just in the next version of the theme or in the new theme that you're using, go into theme.liquid, create another custom.css, and then paste in your custom CSS or just import the file. So it keeps all your code changes in one file, really nice and contained and easy to move across. Okay, and lastly, I know I'm going to get a common question, and that is you've added something, you've added a rule and you're targeting a class and nothing is happening. It's not changing. So there's a few things that could have happened here. You could have just misspelled the name of the class, but I'm guessing that the actual issue is a lack of specificity. So let me show you something like this. If we copy this and then we write product, right? Because like say this is the class that is the parent of the entire product block. So we do product form submit, and we're going to make this like green. What do you think is going to happen in this situation? Actually, let's remove this product for now. What do you think is going to happen here? Is it going to be pink or is it going to be green? Well, the answer is it's going to be green because this comes later. This comes after this, right? Now, what do you think would happen if I did this? Product form submit pink, and then this is green. What would happen? Well, it's still hot pink. And just to prove it, if I remove that .product, it's going to be green, right? So what do we see here? It's that the one that is last takes priority, unless this one is more specific, right? Specificity in CSS is like by how many names do you call something? It's like if I call you John, there's a lot of Johns, but if I call you John Smith, oh, that narrows it down a little bit. But basically, if your style is not taking effect, if nothing is happening, then try to increase the specificity. So if I'm looking for this product form submit, just look for a class of a parent, right? So you can go with form, you can go with, product info wrapper. We can write something like this. .product info wrapper .product form submit. So that's 3 levels of specificity. Like this button, which is inside of this wrapper, which is inside of product, which is inside of body. Maybe body is like the whole HTML file, right? So that's a high level of specificity, and that's more of a chance that your CSS is going to take effect. Now, the last thing, which I'm not sure if I should even really show you, because it can really mess up your store, but it's kind of a nuclear option, is this. You can, at the end of this, after the color, but before the semicolon, you can write exclamation mark important, okay? And that is going to completely override anything else, okay? Even if something has greater specificity, so actually I'm going to add this here. This has way more specificity, so it has like more strength than this one. But we write important, sorry, that's not in the right place. It's after the color. We write important, and this is going to take priority, even though this is stronger and has more specificity. And we can see that it's green. Important should be used really sparingly. It's kind of like a worst case scenario. It's a nuclear bomb, okay? And the reason is that there's a really high chance that you'll overwrite something, and something was going to be green that you don't want to be green. So guys, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you learned something that is really useful for you, but don't overuse this, and yeah, use it only when you really need to. Make sure you keep all your code nice and neat. If you're interested in stuff like this, then I recommend joining Shopify DIY group on Discord. This is like a group for my subscribers, basically, for anyone that's interested in customizing their Shopify store. And as usual, leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.